who have made their mark and are still doing so in their chosen fields of endeavor. And today, my guest is a man who has been tested and is trusted to deliver. I remember him clearly as a former governor of Lagos State during the military era, and I remember very clearly the Operation Sweep. He was also at the helm of affairs in Borno State, which now encompasses Yobe State, and there he made his mark felt. Today, he is the head of that agency that controls the use and abuse of drugs in Nigeria. I'm talking of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, and I want you to please join me as I welcome to the show the Chairman, Chief Executive Officer of NDLEA, General Buba Marwa OFR. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good.
It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. I know you, I've known you way back, but I'm sure that probably some people that the younger generation today might not really know your antecedents. They might not know where you're coming from and your story. Can you quickly take us through your early years, your background?
Well, I'm 68.
Yes.
Born in Katsina to a military father. We were basically military background. My grandfather served in the army, so did my father. So did my late younger brother, who rose to be the General Officer commanding 3 Division, a division that both I and my father served in. And my son is a lieutenant colonel. So we're basically a military family, attended military schools, the academy, very strict upbringing, because
My father used to be deputy imam of the battalion that we served in throughout his career before he became an officer. So basically, this type of upbringing, quite regimented, because growing up in the barracks in those days, the whole barracks is working on with a beagle. Everyone, soldiers, families, protected, guided, and the military barracks is an institution that has everything that society needs: school, hospital, market, the whole stuff.
So, okay, yes, I know that you did all of that, and then you joined the army, you served in various formations. At the time you were out of the country, and then you returned to Nigeria. Like I said earlier, I remember you in Lagos, Operation Swing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I had stints in foreign service in the army as a military attaché in our embassy in Washington in the late 80s. I also had another stint as defense advisor, a defense attaché in a mission to the UN in New York. That was in the 90s. I served as a military governor of Borno State, which was together with the Yobe at the time. Quite challenging in its own way because the circumstances there are unique and different from Lagos. Borno is an arid state, and the difficulties, especially of water. That was why I created the Ministry of Water Resources first. There was no such ministry at the time. Very hospitable, the people there, cooperative, and the revenue was tight. If you look at it, even though funding in those days, I would say, was tight, and the naira was of greater value, but the state used to receive 50 million naira in a month at the time to do everything. The two challenges, or three, if I want to look at that in those days, first was the aridity, the arid nature of the desertification.
Desertification.
And the ministry of forestry.
Okay.
Because we had to try to plant, to build the encroachment of the desert. And then the security. In 1990, when I took over as governor in Borno, the president of Chad was called Hissène Habré. And he was under onslaught of terrorists whose leader was called Idris Deby. Eventually, Idris Deby and his terrorists sacked Hissène Habré's government and the National Army of Chad. Hissène Habré escaped. The army that was now sacked entered Borno State, seeing they couldn't remain. Yes. So it's a rough situation, almost what is happening
of things today.
These days. So they actually encamped themselves in Borno State. Very wide. Not then Borno was 15% of landmass. I remember during the visit of the president at the time President Babangida, a flight from Abuja to be with a helicopter was 1.5 hours. So you can imagine flying within the same state. And there are places you leave in the morning and get in the night, 12 hours in the same Borno. So there's a big challenge on security. How do you get to communities and save them? But through the grace of God, we were able to resolve these issues, working closely with our counterparts in the armed forces. Then, long distances also have their challenges in transmitting power, like electricity, amenities, and so on. That's Borno State.
That's and then you moved on to Lagos.
Yes, in the case of Lagos, The experience in Borno helped. Because I remember clearly the security. There was some, in fact, the security in Lagos was easier to manage.
Than that of Borno.
Far easier. Far easier. Because Lagos is bunched up, small, and you could get
navigate easily
to a position that you could deal with issues, unlike in Borno State.
Yes.
The road network in Lagos, where we did some 700 odd roads, what most people didn't know was my team in Borno State. I actually invited them to measure and give me the first proposal, and then
in Lagos.
Direct labor, yes. Because I did direct labor.
Yes, back then.
In Borno. And then we looked around for who could meet up with the challenge as closest as possible to what they brought to me from Borno. That was how I got Engineer Shukoya, who was, I think, a level 13 officer at the time. But he did very well with his team, and in 3 years he rose to be a PAMSEC.
I remember that you were the only governor, I think at that time, who did not go borrowing. Rather, you shored up the revenue of Lagos State. How were you able to achieve that?
We did the IGR for the first time. We brought IGR from outside the state. Before now, it used to be the revenue board that used to do this type of thing. And they quadrupled the revenue. I think that was one of the foundation of the growth. Secondly, as you said, we didn't borrow 1 naira throughout my tenure. There were no debts from my government. Even the housing, and we did 8,000 estates, those who deposited for the houses, we made sure that we used their money to build the houses. And they had confidence and trust that we will not abandon the projects. So we did everything with their money, commissioned, and they moved in. All that we did was based on the revenue that we had. We didn't borrow.
Quite interesting. Yes. Now, today you are at the helm of affairs in NDLEA. But before I come into NDLEA, at the beginning, everyone, you come from a military background. Was it because grandfather, your father were in the army that you also decided, and then even your late brother decided to go into the army?
More or less, it happens. When you are born and you grow up under a particular environment, that's all that your life has been. That's all that you see. You want to.
It's a natural.
That's right. You know, the marching bands, the drill, the uniforms, the exercises, military exercises,
Yes.
and stuff.
Okay, January 2021, you took over the helm of affairs of NDLEA. In what state did you meet the NDLEA at that time?
Failed states, I would say, using the word. NDLEA was actually half dead. But the chairman, House Committee on Narcotics, says no. It was not half dead, it was dead and buried. It was in a bad state. That's one word that one can say. People actually did not know there was such an institution, and a lot thought that NDLEA was another name for NAFDAC. They thought we all the same thing. That's right. Yeah, that's in a word. It was in a bad state, but I was given a job to do, and I had to get on with it. We had to look at what would be the priorities, what do we need to fix, how do we go about it. Always when you get appointed any positions of public service, you have to begin with a needs assessment, isn't it? What's the objective of this organization, and how do you go about it. Fortunately, I was in the Presidential Advisory Committee for the elimination of drug abuse before this appointment. So that gave me a good view on what the issues were, and based on our recommendations, how do we tackle it? Because PASIDA was tasked with making recommendations on how to eliminate drug abuse in the country. Added to that, I had some limited experience right from Borno on drug use. We had some experience. It wasn't a major target in Borno, but it was something that we looked at in those days, which eventually in Lagos were able to properly crystallize with the area boys and girls at the time, who were a terror to everyone, especially ladies.
Exactly.
Wearing trinkets and carrying nice handbags, and people with fancy cars. They didn't go to certain areas because the area boys will accost them and threaten to smash the windscreen. You the drivers, you figure out which is
safer,
which is better, less expensive. Is it the money, 2,000, or the whole windscreen
of the car,
and so on? We were able to address that because for the most part they were drug abusers. So we resolved that. The NDLEA at the time was an efficient organization because we interacted with Bamei.
Yes.
He came along a couple of times and we gave some help. We gave some vehicles, we supported, we, I believe, gave the NDLEA at the time office facilities. And in the drug supply reduction sphere, they are doing very well. So the state paid more attention to drug demand with the users, like the area boys and so on. And we did the camp in Isheri, which is still in existence and looked after by Lagos State government. We also right from there, which persisted. When we face the situation, drug demand reduction, and we treat the abusers.
Yes.
Rehabilitate the abusers. You have to also address as much as possible the causative factors. Unless you address the factors that led to the drug abuse.
So the need for drugs.
Yeah, they relapse. For instance, if it's because no food, no jobs, frustration and misery, this led you to drug abuse, to attain a temporary escape, then that fundamental problem
is still there.
It's still there. It ought to be addressed. So you can be treated, but if you go back to the same situation, you still face it. So these are some of the things that we're looking at.
All right. You have, since you took over from January 2021, you said you met it almost in a comatose situation, the organization. What has the journey been like in this length of time, combating the issues of drug peddling, drug use, drug abuse?
Yes, the gratitude first has to go to the Almighty God for helping, giving us the perspective, and obviously nothing happens without the grace of God, and we have to give the glory to Him. The President himself is the number one man as far as drug is concerned, because the willpower of the President is what is pulling and pushing us, without which we wouldn't do much. Now, when the President sets a panel or a committee like PASIDA to bring recommendations to him, which clearly means he himself is interested in it. He has seen that this thing is dragging the country down, destroying the country, and now, unless I fix it, it's going to be worse for us. Yes. Others would leave it, say, well, drug abuse, what the heck, this is not my priority. After all, it's their fault, the dregs of the earth. Let them continue to use what they are doing and so on, and face other tangible things like building bridges and railways and other things, but not the president. So he said he gave us full support, encouragement to get things done. And then the crop of directors and workers that I have been very instrumental, because it's a partnership here. One man obviously cannot make a forest. That's what he said. Yes. So we have that, and we also have the officers and men in the various commands. Long-suffering officers and men who have over the years not been having it easy. There's so much stagnation in their movements, in their ranks, promotion,
frustration, no encouragement, that their own liabilities, their benefits are not given, and so on. This was the situation. But working together with that, and after the harmonization committee that I created, we were able to address some of these immediate problems. And they goes to the occasion. You can see the same people, same staff, the same directors that have been
achieving all the successes that we're having, which we expect to be more, because the recruitment is now concluded, and we have twice more people
than before.
That's right. Our partners too have been very instrumental, that is international partners. The countries, drugs everywhere, it's international. And unless there is this partnership, they cannot get to it. For instance, about 3 years ago, on the 8th,
we seized in the port 40 tons of codeine, which is banned. 40 tons. That's a big quantity there. How did we get
that information?
We got it from our partners. Our partners
from India, Southern Turkey and its way. We've had this several times. The captive one, in 6 months, to moving from one port, changing ships and so on, but we kept our eye on the ball until it came. The men are professional.
They know what they're doing.
That's nice. That's good to know. Now, like it or not, Nigeria is facing a major war in terms of drug abuse, especially with the young generation, who are supposed to be the leaders of tomorrow. I know that there have been several interceptions. A lot of drug barons have actually been arrested. I think in 2021 alone, you arrested over 1,000 of them. But we are nowhere near where we ought to be. What are the policies and measures that are being put in place, especially to target the abuse of drugs amongst our youth?
First, we have to face availability and access to drugs, which is the drug supply reduction angle. If the drugs are not available or accessible, then obviously
the people that are looking for it will not have it. We have to face that. The main policy that was there is to enforce the law.
We seize whatever drugs are available in the country, on the streets, in the airports and ports, on the highways, in homes, workplaces, hotels, everywhere. We arrest those culprits and
put them before the law processes. So that's a deterrence and a punishment. That when you seize drugs, you are making it unavailable in the streets. And so if you look at it now, the codeine that was seized.
Yes.
In about 100 mils, it's like 7,000 naira. It used to be cost codeine 400 naira.
In the past.
Even cheaper.
So that's right. So because of the scarcity, because we get, and we work with, by the way, I have to give credit to the customs, SSS. We are all partners. We do, they support us in this activity, and equally we support them in return whenever we make arrests or seizures appertaining to them. So that is first the angle of taking drugs out of the system. And second, and equally important, is the drug demand reduction, where we have to face those who are consuming drugs. That's critical. And now that, the prevention of using drugs is the first policy item. It's usually the prevention that we face first, then counseling and treatment, and aftercare. Aftercare, what happens after you have been treated? Those have to be lined up, as I mentioned. Otherwise, you go back to the same prevailing situation. And as far as prevention is concerned, which is the main thing? You remember yesterday, because I think it was carried by various news organizations, we were in the University of Abuja to launch the War Against Drug Abuse Club. We have to reduce prevalence. We have to reduce our youths. So in the university campuses, we said, do a drug integrity test for the new students and for the returning students.
Including security agencies. No one gets into the NDLEA without drug tests. Then we have to look at the families. Just to start with the families.
Yes.
Parents themselves have to set the example. The parent who abuses drugs already, what is it teaching it? They will just
To follow the same path.
Yes. Very important. Then the communities. It's important that all communities must have their own drug abuse drugs. War against drug abuse drugs, rather, from communities. In the past, communities used to be each other's past. We want us to bring this back. So everybody's child is your child in the community. Within the community, you know who are those better medicine stores that are dealing drugs, or who are those Meshai or Messiahs who do drugs under within the community. Take action. Like we are doing the service to million.
Yes.
Town unions, they roll up to the education. We regularly do not support flogging and other
violence.
What is important is communities have to stand up deal with the school systems, tertiary, secondary, even primary now. We work with the Ministry of Education, and I know that the curriculum has been adjusted with drug education.
Okay.
They have to do more, and schools have to rise up to the challenge. And the various inspectorate divisions have to inspect and make sure that these things are properly implemented in the curriculum. Then the clergy,
Nigerians listen to their religious leaders, like the pastors, bishops, imams, malams. So the advocacy by religious leaders is a very important input in drug demand reduction, as well as traditional rulers. That's why we have suggested that the War Against Drug Abuse committees at the community level should be headed by the bales or the members at the small level. And of course, structurally, this goes all the way. Every local government should have this type of committee for drug abuse, states, and of course, at the national level, I chair the interministerial committee.
You've done so much, you're still doing quite a lot in combating the use and abuse of drugs. But I'm sure you'll also agree with me that to a large extent, especially amongst our youths, it looks like it's now fashionable, especially amongst the artistically minded ones, and even quite a lot of our youths, to use drugs. When you're taking these things, these substances away from the streets by breaking that chain of supply, but they also resort to other things that give them the high. So is it not a case of breaking up at one side and then encouraging the other?
Yes, advocacy will have to cure that, because and good hygiene, obviously, governments and NGOs, they do all kinds of things, gutters,
yes,
and so on and so forth.
Septic tanks, burial grounds.
That's right. So yes, but the largest advocacy, that's really what is important for people who have ears, listen and understand that this thing is not good for you. It destroys your health, destroys the organs, turns you to a psychotic, hearing noises, sounds, terrible situation. But happily, the new psychoactive substances, which is the category that you mentioned, is really at this point infinitesimal. There's up to all the agencies and bodies that are just enumerated to continue the drive at every opportunity to drive the point home. Do not do drugs of whatever form. It's bad for you, for the society, for your health, and do something more wholesome with your life. And also, I must say that the government, in its fight against poverty, is addressing this matter, because most of them are pushed because of need, normal need, need like jobs, like regular meals, like good health care, water, and so on. The absence of these things makes a life empty, dry, frustrating, and they look for escape. That's really where we are. And the government now has this poverty alleviation where 100 million Nigerians, that's the intention of government, will pull out of poverty over the next several years. So there's continuity in governance. Even though in 2020 there will be a change in batting, it is expected that those who will come in will continue this. Very important.
For some, yes, for a lot of people, advocacy will work. But we also know that there are some that advocacy will not work for. And I'm coming as basic as places like motor parks, area boys on the streets, who are not ready to listen to anything. Rather, perhaps the only language they will understand is force. Now, I'm asking myself this. How are you going to handle, or how are you handling that particular area?
Not force. We appeal. There are few cases.
Even to a bus driver that will only smoke or maybe sniff a drug before he gets on the steering?
No, not force. That's the law now. It's against the law to use drugs. It's now left to us, the NDLEA, to determine.
Okay.
This user, should he be treated according to the law? That's what the law prescribes. Or does what he need, or is it counseling
that he needs?
We make that determination, which is a determination that we will never expose, because if we do, probably some will think using is not criminal, and so they will go all over, continue to use. And that's the impression you give when you want to legalize cannabis. Because when you legalize cannabis in a country like Nigeria, where we smoke away or drink or snort 10.6 million Nigerians, and you say it's legal, you will end up with 50 million Nigerians doing cannabis. The use of drugs is illegal in our act and has punishment. But we determine, since we don't want to criminalize the use of drugs, we determine whether what is actually needed is a counseling or treatment. So back to the issue that you raise, like the motor parks, the area boys, and so on and so forth. In Lagos, initially, my government treated them as criminals, which is what they were, I must say.
Exactly.
Because when you attack innocent people steal their watches, that was criminal behavior. And they were treated as such. But eventually, we decided to look the other side of rehabilitation and bringing them up to be useful members of society and of their communities, and to be proud of themselves, for their families to be proud of them. So we rehabilitated them, gave them skills, and that's still not enough to give skills and leave people to go, because they will need money to buy the sewing machines or the chickens or the bakeries to do stuff. So that's really the approach of what you said. For those who are not willing, we persuade them to go for counseling and treatment. And usually families are eager to do this. But when the addiction has reached a stage where they are a threat either to themselves or to their families or to the communities, we, the NDLEA, compel them to go for treatment. Even today, I had to give authorization for such somewhere. Our officers will seize the person and take him for treatment. Because he's a threat to both himself and his family. Moving around the home with a knife, trying to attack people, you can't allow that to happen. That is also part of the law enforcement, apart from what we do when we seize drugs from people. So that takes us to the issue of counseling centers and rehab centers. We have in the country, for government, 33. 33. So that's a very low number.
Not even
for Nigeria.
One per state.
No.
If you look at
No, there are states that don't have. We've gone to all the states, there are states that don't have. But the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari now, there's a compellence for the federal government under the Ministry of Health to build one additional rehab center per state. And from the recommendations of PASIDA, each state government by itself should do 3. One per central zone as a minimum. But communities are encouraged, and I've had the honor to commission community-built rehab centers. Because when you have a drug addiction situation, and most people who have it know that they have it and they need help, because they can't help themselves, they have to hit the bottle or the pill or the injection. They know they need help, and there's nowhere to go for help because there are no rehab centers. They sink deeper.
Exactly.
Which is what we want to avoid. And the NDLEA itself, we have rehab centers in our commands. In the year 2021, we rehabilitated and counseled and discharged over 7,000 of those that we arrested and others that are brought with their families. It's a continuing struggle. And this year, in the budget, we believe there are 3 more rehab centers from the NDLEA budget that will come up. So it's a continuous thing, very important. We're also looking at a calling service. That we believe between now and June, we believe it will be inaugurated because of stigma. There are people, they don't want to go to a rehab center. They want to see.
But they know they need help.
That's right. That decently dressed woman doesn't want to be seen.
Yes.
Rehab center. So we're having the call center, which will be a bank of psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, psychiatric nurses, counselors, 24/7.
That would be good.
That will take calls, offer help, guidance, counseling, and where to go, which is the nearest rehab center facility where we are calling, because countrywide.
Yes.
We'll base it here. It's some of the steps. We are also moving to the drug integrity tests. We are recommending drug integrity tests. In place of work, anybody are hiring do a drug test so they know that to get a job they have to be negative. So that will cut it down. Schools, if you know that go to school, university, you do this test, and if you are negative, you won't start with your mates or you won't do the exams. That's another discouragement. Workplaces, the motor parks that you mentioned, random tests. We're encouraging that. Security agencies, we're already working with the army and other services. We do their tests for them. We ourselves, charity must begin at home. We all test ourselves here in the NDLEA. So we don't joke with it. The integrity tests we now wish to extend to marriage. This is very important, because if we want to face demand reduction, we have to find ways of discouraging our youths. And the youths, all youths, after school, after a job, marriage is the next. And nobody wants to get married to a drug addict. So why do you want to take a chance when technology has made it easy
for you
can know. The same way you don't want HIV,
yes,
the thing.
Partner.
The only difference here is if my son or my daughter want to marry the other guy, let me be the one to do the drug integrity test
for the other party.
That's right.
Okay.
We will select the clinic to do it. We will allow, because all kinds of games.
Yes.
You know, we've learned a lot in the NDLEA recruitment process. We do this and they tie urine. They tie somebody else's urine in a little pouch.
Yes.
We discovered that when they are using it.
Okay.
Yes. So now.
So they give another person sample.
That's right. So now we escort them.
So they will give.
Absolutely. The ladies will escort ladies, the men will escort the men. And so when they come for the interview and they see they are doing drug tests, some of them run away. They don't even bother coming because they know that we are going to pick it out. So the drug integrity test, even in workplaces.
Yes.
In some places, I know in the US Armed Forces, it's computerized. So in a base, the names are all, the computer will bring out maybe 10 names, and they say, okay, such and such and such go
randomly
on so day. And you know, if you are found positive, there will be sanctions.
Definitely.
For it. It would affect your record. These are the type of things we want to bring.
That you're introducing. Now, you've done so much in terms of seizures, but it looks like you're barely scratching the surface. Because as you have agreed earlier too, these things have to do with some international connections. And I know that in Asia and maybe part of the Middle East, there is a high prevalence of drug transfer between Nigeria and some of these countries. How well, at least you mentioned India with the codeine case, but even going beyond things like codeine, how well have you been able, has the NDLEA been able to reduce this inflow, even into Nigeria?
Partnerships. The India that you mentioned, we have a trip coming up with our opposite numbers there. Partnerships, MOUs, so that you cooperate, exchange intelligence, exchange information, and if it means extraditing criminals, we've caught a couple recently. The Interpol sends and we get them. and send them off where they belong to jail. So partnerships, that's the most important way that we've been dealing, even continentally. Yesterday we had Gambians. I gave them certificates from the Gambian Drug Law Enforcement Agency. We have a partnership with them. They trained in our academy, and we just discharged them yesterday to go back home, carrying with them the skills that we have learned in Nigeria. So it continues. Sometime, I think 6 months ago or so, we had a major seizure where they call Captaba. These are amphetamine type pills, which were for the insurgents and bandits. These are pills that when consumed, they give you a superhuman, endurance, fearlessness, more ferocity, and so on. Through the grace of the Almighty God, working with our partners, they told us which containers. We tracked the container until they arrived, and we used our canine unit, the dogs. We discovered this thing was inside machines. Machines were built deliberately just to conceal the contrabands, like 500,000 pills. And we're just imagining if this had gotten to the Boko Haram and all those bandits, you can imagine the disaster that would have created. Now, you mentioned scratching the surface. I think now we've done a little bit more than that.
Okay.
But when you seize over 3 million kilograms, that's a substantial amount off the streets.
Yes.
And if we wanted to distribute that to all Nigerians, it would go around at least 10 or 15 grams to every Nigerian. So that's something that is out of the way, which will go for destruction since they're not used. So it's a continuous, the NDLEA is up and standing and facing the challenge fully, and we trust and have confidence that Nigeria, being a drug-free nation, is not a mirage. It is achievable if we continue. There are countries, and when you say drug-free, it's like when you say a country has full employment.
Yes.
That does not necessarily mean every single person
is employed.
But there's a certain majority.
Yes, it's
something like that. So
now, you're talking of collaborations and all, but amongst your officers too, in the past, I don't know about now, but I'm sure that it's not something that can be done overnight. In the past, NDLEA officers have also been accused of complicity. Are there any mechanisms in place where you're able to identify the bad eggs and weed out the wheat from the chaff?
Absolutely. We have a special unit which reports to me directly and which I assign directly. That unit monitors and evaluates all the commands, the seizures, the exhibits, the exhibit rooms, the prosecution cases. So if a case is going too slow, I'd find out what's going on here. And they check the records and obviously the exhibits to see is there any tampering, the motorized patrols and stuff. Are there seizures which we're unaware of, in which some deals are struck and so on, and we come down heavily. I also created a Provost Marshal's office that enforces discipline. So once we get these reports from these teams, we send it off to the Provost Marshal and they're disciplined. We have disciplinary committees, we have on-the-room procedures. We don't joke with it. Discipline in an organization such as ours is job one.
You're a man who has always, you have your hands in several things. I mean, you've achieved a lot in several areas. And I keep asking myself, this man who is always so busy, how much time does he have on the home front when you're not battling drugs and drug abuse in Nigeria?
All my time after work is at home because I've now grown too old to do clubs, clubbing and all that. Those were things we did as youngsters. So one spends most of one's time
At home
these days with family, and there's a lot to do, as you know, especially in this day and age of science and technology.
So what are those things you do in your leisure hour, even when you're at home?
Family time, music. I have my own chess computer which I play this. I started playing chess in school, secondary school, and it's something of great interest. Movies, reading.
Aha, you enjoy reading. Now finally, General Buba Marwa, it's not being patronizing here, but you're a man who has a good fashion sense. What determines your fashion sense?
My wife. She buys all my shoes, clothes, and stuff.
And colors?
She does, but white seems to be my favorite. And ash.
Your final message to Nigerians on how we can rid this nation of drug prevalence, drug abuse. Interestingly, the NTA this year is working with the NDLEA, and we're going to be advocating against the use of drugs and drug abuse. So what's your own message to Nigerians?
First is to thank NTA. I think last year it was rape, and on a visit to the Director General, he did give us a promise that they're going to face drugs, and it is happening. We are very encouraged and we appreciate, and we hope this will contribute immensely, and we'll take the opportunity to call all the media organizations. It's a strong message to them to also toe this line. We've also engaged the artists, singers, actors. We had the guilds a few days ago. We appeal to them, first of all, to set the tone by being good example. Because what they do that our youths emulate and copy. And we appeal to them, set the good example, and continue the advocacy for positive advocacy for people not to use. And from there, my general message: please, Nigerians, say no to drugs. Don't take drugs. Drugs are bad for your health. Why do you take something that is injurious? Your organs, your brain, your livelihoods, complete washout. Stay away from drugs. Stay away from drugs.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, even though I wish I had more time, but I know you have other national engagements that you need to attend to.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed this.
The fight against drug and drug abuse, drug prevalence, drug reliance is one that needs to be fought by you and I. We cannot afford to have a society that is dependent on the use of drugs. So we must wipe drugs clean from our streets and from our society. That's the message I am taking away from this conversation today, as I have been speaking with the Chief Executive Officer, the Chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, General Buba Marwa, OFR. Why don't you join us again, same time, same station next week on another beautiful episode of Executive Discuss as we draw the curtain on this week's show. My name remains Ololade Adinjadeli. Stay away from drugs and God bless Nigeria. Bye-bye.
Hours a day, 7 days a week. You can watch NTA International live on your TV, computer, iPad, tablet and phone. Log on to visiontv.co.uk and click on the thing, then NTA. You can also download the iOS or Android app on your mobile device to watch NTA International on the go, anywhere in the world. NTA International. Your window through the world.
Hello and welcome to another amazing edition of Your Weekend.
I'm telling you, oh, it has to be heat and it has to be steamy, it has to be hot. But we decided that, somebody has to tell a story that is family oriented. Welcome to another edition of Talking Movie. Who's everyone here cared about? See, when you say plural, you can't call water. See, you don't excavate water.
This is a #1 program, Gallery.
Do you love to gist or gossip?
It's not it is extremely wrong. And we love it.
Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Whip and Grill.
Welcome to the slant today, where we say it as it is and we get to enjoy ourselves talking about various things that are happening in our society.
Beyond 6 packs.
So your job still remains as the man. To protect the woman, to project the woman.
You need to do that.
It is said that laws and practices relating to women's property and inheritance rights vary the world over. Here in Nigeria, while there is no legislation restricting women, customary laws have inhibited them from benefiting from family inheritance. But there is a law by the Rivers State government on prohibition of women's rights to share in family property has provided the much needed clarity on the rights of all gender. Now getting insight on the implications for women is a focus on Panorama from Port Harcourt Network Center. I am Jenny Bassi. Synergy between humanitarian and development actors, as well as peace-building partners towards charting the future of peace and prosperity. President Muhammadu Buhari started this at a high-level event on humanitarian intervention organized by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development on the margins of the UN General Assembly in New York. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports.
The event, attended by critical stakeholders involved in humanitarian action and disaster mitigation, is put together to strategize on more efficient, collaborative and resourceful means of integrating and sustaining humanitarian interventions for improved livelihood for those in need. It has as its theme strengthening resilience and sustaining development, a humanitarian development peace approach to leaving no one behind.
Leaving no one behind means proactively identifying, empowering, and galvanizing the agency of those most at risk of being left behind.
The United Nations is committed to exercise our global leadership and comparative advantage in trying to deploy the solutions and the pathways to peace that ultimately strengthen the resilience of our countries and people.
For President Muhammadu Buhari, the high-level event is not only timely but reflective of the urgent need for continuous engagement towards reinforcing existing capacities and strengthening coping strategies in view of the uncertainty and unpredictability of the global community in the last 3 years.
The task before this August gathering, therefore, is how to analyze our shared experiences over the years, the effectiveness of our responses at the international and domestic levels, the gaps identified, and devise possible transformational solutions for the future.
The President said already policies, frameworks, programs and plans that form the foundation necessary for building resilience have been developed by his administration, and visionary changes are made consistently towards achieving a future of peace and prosperity in the country.
As we deliberate on these issues, let us remind ourselves of our duty to humanity and our planet, the vulnerability we all face in conflicts and disasters. I implore you to actively engage on how we can leverage the existing coordination framework and the national humanitarian development peace plan to realize a triple nexus approach to leaving no one behind.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, who convened the high-level event, announced a presidential approval of the Nigerian Humanitarian Hub. The hub, she said, is designed to serve as a one-stop shop for humanitarian interventions to those most in need, as well as improve access to specialized services curated for persons of concern.
As actors and leaders, citizens entrust upon us the responsibility of charting a future of peace and prosperity. This we can only guarantee through strategic foresight and committed and visionary leadership.
The nexus between peace, security and development need not ever enter fights. If there is no peace, there will be no security. And if there is no security, there is no development. The insurgency is coming to an end. We have started seeing light at the end of the tunnel.
As you may be aware, women are a driving force in disaster risk reduction and emergency response, and therefore should not be left unattended to.
The high-level event is co-organized by the UNHCR, United Nations Development Programme, African Union, and the International Organization for Migration, IOM. From New York, Adamu Sambo, NTA.
Nigeria Integrated National Financing Framework on Sustainable Development has been formally launched by President Muhammadu Buhari. It is aimed at mobilizing much-needed sustainable financing plan for Nigeria to deliver on her commitment to the SDGs and other national development aspirations. The strategic high-level event took place in New York on the margins of the UN General Assembly. Again, State House correspondent Adam Sambo reports.
It is with some pride that I present to you the Nigeria Integrated National Financing Framework Report 2022.
The Integrated National Financing Framework Report is a tool towards improving SDG financing without increasing public debt and contingent liabilities to levels that are detrimental to Nigeria's economic sustainability. This event presents another opportunity for stakeholders to discuss the mileage covered so far and the next steps of action by the Buhari administration in its commitment towards bringing the SDGs to a point where no one is left behind.
This financing strategy is supported by a clear roadmap and monitoring framework with the necessary transparency and accountability to make public spending more effective for the benefit of the people. As we speak, Mr. President, we have coordinated about 18 state governments to integrate the sustainable development goals in their policy program and budget. We believe that before the end of administration, we're going to cover 96 states and FCT, so that all of us will work in tandem with the aspiration of sustainable development goals.
President Muhammadu Buhari said since joining his colleagues at the 70th session of the UN General Assembly to adopt the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, Nigeria set for herself a purposeful goal of seeing an economically sustainable, socially inclusive, and environmentally resilient future.
For Nigeria and indeed Africa as a whole, achieving the SDGs will mean ending poverty and hunger, safeguarding our ecosystem and the planet, and ensuring our people live in peace and prosperity by their 2030. Despite the challenges posed by the sharp drop in the prices of crude oil and the coronavirus pandemic, Nigeria has remained resolute in our genuine desire to maintain and grow our economy.
With this new financing strategy, Nigeria hopes to not only promote the strategic alignment of financial policies with sustainable development, but also promote the enabling conditions for domestic and international public and private financial sectors to best respond to the nation's national needs.
It is pertinent to state that achieving inclusive, broad-based, and sustainable development is a cardinal objective of our administration. I urge all Nigerians, the international community, and our development partners to recognize the importance of this integrated approach to financing development as we continue to count on your leadership in its immediate implementation.
There were goodwill messages from the United Nations, the European Union, and the UNDP.
I'm glad to see my own country, its leadership, Nigeria, leading the way not only in Africa, but also at the global level. The United Nations proudly stands with Nigerians to support them as they tap into these opportunities and take the next steps in the country's amazing journey. I firmly believe that if Nigeria, the most populous country on the continent and the largest economy in Africa, succeeds in its efforts to achieve the SDGs, it will be a tremendous boost to other countries on the continent and in fact in the world.
During the event, key participants applauded Nigeria for successfully completing the integrated national financing framework journey aimed at helping policymakers to lay out strategies to increase investments and manage financial and non-financial risks towards achieving sustainable development priorities. From New York, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
Development, President Muhammadu Buhari has been nominated as the chairman of the All Progressives Congress 2023 Presidential Campaign Council. In a statement, Secretary of the party's Presidential Campaign Council, James Falake, said among the nominees are the APC presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the deputy chairman, APC national chairman Abdullahi Adamu as the deputy chairman, 2 Vice Presidential candidate Kashim Shettima as Vice Chairman, and Plateau State Governor Simon Lalong is the Director General. The Presidential Campaign Council has zonal coordinators, state coordinators, advisors, and campaign patrons. It also comprises directors, deputy directors, secretaries, and directorates that will supervise about 33 directorates. The bidding process of Nigeria Air has been concluded with Ethiopian Airlines as the preferred bidder with 49% share. Nigerian investors MRS, Shaku, and the Nigerian Foreign Fund have 46%. while the remaining 5% goes to the federal government of Nigeria. Minister of Aviation Hadi Siriki, who stated this in Abuja, noted that both the financial and technical status of Ethiopian Airlines qualify it for the selection. He said the Nigerian Air, which is to come on stream soon, will begin with about 30 aircraft in the first 3 years. Siriki spoke about the benefits of the Nigerian Air. Nigeria Air is expected to be launched with a shuttle service between Abuja and Lagos to establish a new, comfortable and affordable travel between the two major airports.
Shareholders 51% Nigerian, with 49 strategic equity partners. When this company, Nigeria Air Limited, is leasing the airplane, it does not restrict the company to must lease from Ethiopian Airlines. Is a misconception. They can lease aircraft from anywhere. They can buy aircraft from anywhere. But when the standards are high, everybody comes up. Everybody comes up. So you have more improved service, and the passenger will benefit. And the more the merrier. The intent and purpose of putting and setting up a very well-structured airline in the two sets of airline is such that the passenger experience will be more than before, and the options will increase, and the prices will come down, especially when you open your skies. Airline will have no stepping right of government, and there will be no control of management whatsoever of this airline. Totally private sector. The investors will decide who manages this airline.
In River State can now heave a sigh of relief as the new law in River State now empowers them to share in their family property without any hindrances. In this report, Emmanuel examines the practicability of River State's curtailment for women's rights to share in family property law number 2 of 2022 recently signed by the River State government.
Over the years, some cultural practices in River State have inhibited women from certain rights in their families. While they partake in almost every responsibility in their families, they are, however, denied some rights which only the male children enjoy, including rights to family inheritance. But with the signing into law the River State prohibition curtailment of women's rights to share in family property law number 2 of 2022 of River State, the narrative has changed for good.
This law, they're entitled to own anything, to inherit something from their parents. If anybody discriminates against them, they can go to court and challenge it.
The landmark legislation which allows women in the state to share in their direct parents' property has been described as a liberation from customary and traditional shackles.
That's a law, the customs have developed and developed. Some customs are being dropped as a result of they are no longer useful in the contemporary society. So I think that's exactly what is happening.
We also know that our constitution, which is the grand norm, has said freedom from discrimination. I don't think what the governor was just doing or the university was just to give it more teeth.
Some pundits argue that laws can be made, but say implementation is another. What is the practicability of this law?
Well, it's not left for women, one, for the enlightenment to go around, and for women to stand up for their rights.
The new law in River State also validates earlier court judgments on the right of women to share in family inheritance in the country. In Port Harcourt, Emmanuel Helene.
To discuss on this topic is none other than a legal practitioner based here in Port Harcourt, Hayakim. It is my pleasure to have you on Panorama.
Thank you very much for having me once more. Thank you so much.
Now, it is no news that Governor Wike had signed 3 bills into law. But our focus now is the end to the denial of women's inheritance, which is prevalent among cultures and traditions. Now, can you explain the key points in the prohibition of women's right to share in family property?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the River State Governor and the House of Assembly who also supported to pass this bill. But I must quickly say that, like one of the commentators said, this bill is already existing. The law is already existing before now. I think what the governor just did is to give it a legal backing. That's why I say thank you, which some of the states have not been able to do, because before now I have been able to take some family members, uncles, to court, and they will recover the right of the women. So before now, several cultures, like you just mentioned, curtails the right of women to inherit in their father's property, but the law does not. The law does not. I think over the years, what has happened is ignorance. People didn't know that the woman has the right. In fact, there was a matter we did like 5 years ago, 2015 or so, and when I mentioned it for the first time in the family meeting, that the girl, because the mother died, and the uncles and even the aunties came up and brought up the younger brother, and that the younger brother should inherit everything, that the girl does not have to inherit anything. And when I mentioned for the first time, I told them in the meeting, and I said this girl has a right as much as the guy. The auntie was even the one that was saying, no, it's not possible, no. I said, and this woman, in quote, is educated. I said, no, I am not telling you. He said, when was the law made? The law is not. I said, auntie, the law is there. It's because you don't know. The law makes two of them equal. Nobody discriminates against one another. And at the end of the day, I told her, they went to the police told them everything, we went back to court, and court said the same thing, that this girl has to share with the, even women don't know themselves. They don't even know that they have such a right. But with the passage of this law now, a lot of them will now wake up. I think I'm going to see a lot of litigations after now. Even those that have been resting on their oars will wake up. Those that didn't know will wake up. They will consult a lawyer, and they will not have to go to court. And I think it's good. It's extremely good, so that people will now know what is actually obtainable.
Okay, I was asking of the points. Is it going to be like 50-50, the sheriff formula?
Yes, 50-50. Everybody is recognized. Also, yes, everybody is 50-50. Everybody is recognized. Nobody should be discriminated against. Like I said, no law in Nigeria before now says women should not inherit. That's the point. No law says women should not inherit. So if the law has not prohibited a thing, you cannot prohibit that thing by contract, by conduct, by culture, by expression, by whatever way. You cannot. Whatever the law has not said is not correct, you cannot say it's correct.
Okay.
So if the law keeps quiet, that means you can go ahead and do it. If the law says, they said the law prohibits it. So my point is that no law before now prohibits any woman from inheriting from the father's inheritance. No law at all. Both the constitution, no law legal, no law, no codified law, no statute, no case law to say that women. It's just ignorance. We didn't know. But this one will create awareness, to create awareness.
So what are the implications of these?
Yes, the implications, like I've already mentioned, the implication is that I'll begin to see litigations now. I'll begin to see a lot of women wake up to say, no, I am also the daughter of this man. We are talking about especially where the man did not leave a will, or where he did not do what we call gift inter vivo, gift while alive. Some people now, what we advise people presently is that when you are alive, as you're buying properties, you can be buying in the name of your children, or even if you buy in your name, you can do what we call gift inter vivo, gift while you are alive. You give them, and you can put a caveat and say, until when I die, this my son will take this my daughter will take this. So that way, by the time you are giving it out, that is why some people give out their properties to churches. They can say this church takes this place when I'm out. You can't violate that. While the man was alive, usually they contest gift, they contest will, because each time wills are supposed to be renewed. And so if you didn't renew the last one, or the age matter, because the people begin to contest. But if you are alive and you have bought in their names, or you have given it out while alive, nobody can challenge it. So the implication is that to create more awareness. People
people will now wake up and know that actually I needed to benefit from my father's property. I am now up. I want to benefit from it. I think that's what this law will definitely do, and it's a good one. I commend the governor of Rivers State, and I commend the House of Assembly who supported him to pass this law to pass this bill into law.
Okay,
I think with this, even what we are talking about now, as we are discussing it now, it will also create awareness. A lot of people will now understand that they needed not to sleep, that they have equal right with their brothers.
Okay, but before I let you go, what area do you think priority should be placed in this new law? Briefly.
Well, the priority should be placed on the area of making it, actually implementing it, not just let it be on paper. Let the implementation start taking place. But like you said, there is no time daughter or to daughter, and the daughter is married the other way again, and
we'll have more platform to talk about that. But for now, I thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Legal practitioner based here in Rivers State. We'll now pause for a break. Panorama continues shortly.
The vaccine offers hope for a safe country free of coronavirus. I urge all state governments, traditional and religious leaders to take the lead in the mobilization effort within their environment and spheres of influence. I similarly urge all eligible Nigerians to present themselves and be vaccinated in accordance with the order of priority already mapped out at the various authorized designated centers only.
The Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps Rivers State Command has paraded 5 alleged oil thieves arrested at different locations within Rivers State. Gabriel Aminike reports.
Operatives of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps has arrested 5 alleged oil thieves. They have also intercepted 2 trucks and 5 other vehicles laden with unverified quantity of suspected illegally refined automotive gas oil at various locations within Rivers State.
We have 1 officers to the teeth from having report to us. Anybody involved shall truly out. We are not able to compromise.
Addressing newsmen at the command's headquarters in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, State Commandant Michael Oga said that the command will not rest in its bars until Rivers State is rid of oil thieves.
We need to help us and give us information on any illegal activities in Rivers State. He
further calls on residents of Rivers State to report illegal bunkering and other criminal activities within Rivers State. In Port Harcourt, Gabriel Aminike, NTA News.
Let's now join Elijah Odiko for sports updates.
Super Eagles of Nigeria drew 2-2 with the Desert Foxes of Algeria Team B in an international friendly on Friday. Alex Iwobi's superb form for club Everton pays a dividend with a goal coming from him for the Eagles. Cyril Desires was also